Welcome to the another edition of Midnight Cable. I'm Giman.
And I'm Brandon. In this show, we talk about anime, both news and old one that we watched recently.
This week, we tried something a little different by focusing on genre we don't watch that very often, the music anime. It's not that we dislike it, it's just that there's a huge overabundance of them that it's hard to choose. Anyway, the two anime we chose, were Listeners and Symphogear. They're unique in a sense that they're not based on any previously existing work, which makes them original in a sense. And that kind of sounds great on paper, right? Let's just start with Listeners. You know how in many of those movies by the likes of Tarantino, there are dozens of references and homages to other works, be it film, TV, music, etc. Now imagine if you strip everything good that makes their inclusion justified, most importantly a coherent narrative, and just make an entire story with a basic plot with the entire focus being on making most obvious references, which anyone with half a brain can spot, then you would have Listeners. The story is about Echo, a boy collecting trash on a site where a great disaster happened years ago. One day, while trying to find spare parts, he finds a girl with amnesia, who he later names Mew. They soon discover she is a player, a warrior who can pilot a mecha with music-based attacks. Together, they embark on a journey across the world to fight against the Earless, a group of mysterious beings who are behind the devastated state of the world. During their travels, they also encounter a far more terrifying foe. Subtle Western music references! So, Brandon, what did you think of Listeners?
Well, I'm not sure what to say about this anime. It felt like a 3-hour-long music video that's full of reference to Western music that has basically all the visual flair, style, but it has no substance. There's a lot of elements that would make this one of the better shows. For once, it's made by MECHA, a studio that we so highly revere and praise in the last episode. And the second thing is, it's written by one of the writer who wrote one of my favorite show ever. So coming into it, I have a lot of expectation, but the final result just fell flat on its back, and it's overall just a bland and boring show.
Yeah, that does sound a bit more generous than, how I would describe it. I mean, I guess if I were to simplify it, this anime is like an first-year art student who creates the basic plot, finds the right animators to create interesting visuals and basic animation, and then goes on a Google search to find some of the most well-known Western musicians and add references to them, including lyrics in their original language, and then calls it a masterpiece of work and just makes it an anime.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad talking about this show especially after we reviewed Dorohedoro last week. Such a more complex and fun and enjoyable show to watch. This, on the other hand, I think that this anime deserves every single criticism that we're gonna give it, because this might be one of the most pretentious titles that we have seen in quite some time.
Yeah, and by pretentious we mean the references that I just alluded to, and I mean this anime basically boils down to making one Western music reference after another, and not really much else to it.
Yeah, I mean while some reference can be subtle, there are also a lot of feel not so obvious one. I mean, I think we will not, however, cover them here, because we want to focus on talking about the show as it is, the plot and story, without talking about the references. But however, if there are interest in it, we will be covering those references in an extra Omake episode.
Yeah, just to save you from the headache that we suffered through.
Let us start with the main character, Echo and Moo.
Hearing those names, never fails to make my head hurt.
The obvious, not so subtle references in their name.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think these are very generic seasonal anime character that we have seen so many times before. One is a generic anime protagonist who's this country boy who's seek adventure, and another is just a tsundere girl who constantly, annoyed at the main character antics. They are nothing unique and original, but I would say at the same time, they do have some semblance of a character personality and character development and overall character chemistry with each other.
Yeah, but unfortunately, most of their dialogue, are basically exposition to the audience. And while exposition is nothing new to the anime itself, because the audience needs to know about the world and, and some concepts. But the difference between this and others is that they have a, logical story reason, whether it's that they slowly mention it in conversations or there is some character who is completely clueless about the world around her, so someone more knowledgeable has to explain to them. But this anime, that they just mention it as if to people that they already know all about, that they don't say it for any other reason than, just us audience getting to know what the hell are they talking about and what this world is. I mean, imagine, if I suddenly, start talking about, my backstory, just in a casual conversation, like that time, I got beat up in high school. I mean, there I was in the pool of my own blood, being beaten senseless, by bullies in my school. And there was nothing I could do, but from that moment on, I just withdrew myself even more, never trusting people. Never been able to, leave this, prison that I, put myself through since I was afraid of, meeting people, and it was just, so cold and dark, alone there.
Yeah, I mean, imagine having suffered through all of that, pointless, dialogue. The girl just told you, oh God, you're such a perfect creep. And so that's the whole extent of, Moo and Echo dynamic and character relationship to each other.
Well, that and, and how she goes back and forth of, wanting to go adventures with him and not wanting to go, that, oh, it's too dangerous. Okay, well, go now. Okay, I'm all, again, I feel it's too dangerous. I like that. Like, make up your mind, you Jesus.
Yeah, arguably one of the more interesting character out of the side cast for me would be Nur. She's an XP of Kurt Cobain. She has her own complete character story and character arc, which gets resolved at the end of the story. And at one point during the show, she gets her own episode dedicated to just her and developing her character.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fond of, these episodes that, focus on the side characters instead of the main cast, because it kind of shows, what's going on behind the scenes. But aside from, Nir, while there are some few other side characters that can sometimes be entertaining, just as the XP of Prince. But most of the time, they're really shallow and, and the kind of characters that we've seen a million times before, and we don't really care about them at the end, and their only purpose seems to be shouting random English phrases of some famous musicians and songs related to them.
You made me realize.
So let's just talk about the plot structure and the world building.
Yeah, the basic structure of each episode boils down to this. Echo and Mew visit some location, be it a forest or a city that has resemblance both in name and appearance to a real world location. And that episode also has this, genre of music that also has the musicians of that particular genre. And their only purpose, in that episode, other than, sometimes explaining about the plot, is to shout out, random English lyrics, to make it sound cool or something like that.
Yeah, so whether or not they are, names of attacks or just, some random, concept just flowing around, it's really confusing. I would say that it has a really basic hero journey structure, humble beginning, engaging middles, and, climax. The humble beginning of this anime, the first 4 episodes, is quite painfully boring. It just feels so slow, and the character development is barely visible, and, it's just, drip feeding to us, and there's a tons of exposition thrown in. However, it does slightly improve slowly, starting from episode 5, and it stayed consistently there until it finally falling flat on its face at the final episode.
Yeah, I agree. Each episode has its self-contained story, with the exception of the final few episodes. It kind of made me wish that that the scale of the show would have been a lot smaller. It actually would have been far more interesting if each episode was just a small self-contained story, and it focuses on the history of music and certain genre. And while it could still have its main plot, it wouldn't have necessarily have to be this end of the world scenario, and it would have actually been far more entertaining as a far more accurate a goal that the anime clearly tried to do, which is a tribute to the famous musicians and Western genres.
I agree. I mean, this is like the basic Shinjiro Watanabe story structure. You have the self-contained episode focusing on side character, and then it slowly built up surrounding this one central main plot, and then at the end, every single old character that was introduced, every single event that was unfold, come together in one final climax, and the story is resolved at the end. However, the climax of this show and the message that it tries to give the audience is rather shallow. It's your typical, war is bad, it's just love and music that will bring people together.
Yeah, and not to mention that whole finale, in the last 4 episodes, reminds me of the conclusion of season 1 of Rage of Bahamut, because it could be summed up, easily in bullet points. I mean, boy meets girl, they fall in love, girl gets kidnapped, the girl is brainwashed crazy, she turns out to be the daughter of Satan, the guy saves her, he affirms his love for her, and the day is saved, and the adventure continues.
Yeah, and I mean, as I alluded to it before, the writer of this show wrote one of my most favorite anime of all time. It's so dear in my heart. I mean, I should know. I watched it 5 times, and that show is EUREKA 7. There's a lot of similarity with the main character and how the story is structured and how it's flowed in this anime that are so similar to EUREKA 7. Some example I can point out is Echo and Mu relationship, kind of similar to Renton and EUREKA relationship in EUREKA 7. And how they, start on their journey, and eventually it's revealed that Mu and EUREKA also has some sort of world-destroying powers, and it's up to Renton, or in this case Echo, to save the day. And during the way journey, they met these interesting side characters. They developed their relationship, and they has this cool mecha battles and. The problem with this show, as compared to EUREKA 7, is that EUREKA 7 has 50 episodes, and a whole 30 or something of it is spent on developing the character chemistry between Renton and EUREKA. In this show, there's only 3 episodes that's focused on building Echo and Mu relationship, and the rest are just pointless crap.
Yeah, pretty much. The biggest sin that this show has is that it's a music anime, but all it has going for it are these clever homages to famous musicians and genres of the Western world. But it's written in a way that it could be like some non-experienced person like myself, would just do some Google search and and then add them in, and to make me sound as if, I'm sort of genius by making that reference, with no substance. I mean, I'll be honest here. I'm not that familiar, with music in general. I mean, sure, I know a few bands, and I listen to them, like Pink Floyd, Queen, and I knew a few of those songs, but I would never call myself a music expert. In fact, calling myself a casual is being generous in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, so to typical anime watcher and non-experienced people like us, when you watch this anime, you saw the musical reference, oh my God, it's so, weird, it's so intriguing, and then you go just try to research the meaning behind them, and you have this, you'll go, oh, wow. So that's how it is moment. it's kind of give you this illusion that the story and its theme are deeper than that what they really are. But actually it's not, because, you know, if you are just a person that, you know, has more experience in music than us, you know, you would probably find this, you know, just insulting and just on the nose and, you know, technically pretentious.
Which would be an understatement. As for the show's original music itself, the only good parts that we can think of are the opening itself and some of the individual episodes' endings. The opening's visuals especially, you know, are quite striking, and it kind of, you know, lures us into thinking that there might be far more interesting events that actually happen in the story based on things that happen in the opening, that it kind of gives this false impression, you know, that there's some cool shit going on.
Yeah, I would rather watch the false advertisement that's shown on the opening than the actual show itself. I think the sound design for the most part is really good. I mean, you can hear the impressive, you know, sound of the reverb of the music when it made. You know, some really cool moment. But then again, the original soundtrack is so forgettable. It's not even good at all. Like, you would think that a music-focused anime like this would have some, you know, good music or original song to back it up. I mean, they even went to have effort to put in references and, you know, homage to these, you know, Western musicians. Why not, you know, actually pay a bit some, you know, get the license for their song and, you know, make remix of them, you know, to make it more, you know, engaging, you know, trying to hit the note when it's hot.
Yeah, I mean, even that one Macross anime did that, you know, with that song, you know, what was it called, you know?
You know, the rune sparking in September. You know, which is a reference to September, you know, wind, water and fire?
Earth, Wind and Fire.
Oh yeah, sorry,
like we said, we're not that familiar with Western music, but even that, if they could do it, you know, why couldn't this,
I mean, you know, why not have that instead of, you know, inferior techno pop, you know, and some, you know, motivating, you know, music, you know, going on the background while characters are just, you know, reciting some of the most generic or, you know, random Western song lyrics in English. You know, you have your "you made me realize," and you know, it's a moment like that. It's just so clunky.
Yeah. I can see it, but I can't feel it.
I can see it,
but I can't feel it.
As for the animation itself, I think it's very clunky, especially with the mecha battle part. As I alluded to it before, you know, mecha is a dying genre, and one of the many reasons for it is that, you know, they just so overused with 3D CGI, and, you know, they don't make mecha like they used to before, you know. So the battles is very clunky. It feels really laggy. It feels, you know, unimpressive. Character design are good. I would give this anime credit, and some of the individual character mecha are really unique. But it doesn't save from the less than impressive animation that this anime has, especially during the battle itself. You know, most of the mecha battles in this show just revolve around characters just shouting random song lyrics, and then a huge explosion happened.
Yeah, with the same attack and, you know, no variation, you know, I'm sure they might shout sometimes a different, sentence, you know, of English, but at the end of the day, it's the same attack. I mean, yeah, I get the idea, you know, a sound-based attack, you know, is this huge wave, I like that, but couldn't they have at least, you know, made it more visually interesting like that? But no, you know, it's just an excuse to, you know, to make references to songs. I mean, you'd think that, you know, with a music anime like this, that there would have been more impressive, you know, animation and also even better visuals to accompany that music. But then again, the music itself, you know, in the background is crap. So I guess it does match after all.
Yeah. So is there anything that we liked about Listeners?
Well, I think my favorite episode of the show was with the Pink Floyd reference, or more specifically, The Wall, where, Mu, Echo, and Mew go to this, triangle-shaped thing that obviously references, Dark Side of the Moon cover. And what I liked about that episode is that, unlike the previous installments, it was slightly more subtle. And what I mean is that most of the dialogue was, just about the main plot and, and what is going on the screen. And it was the visuals, and the characters themselves that kind of shows the message that Pink Floyd's The Wall is about. I mean, I haven't seen the movie Pink Floyd The Wall, but I do know the basic premise about this, psychedelic, movie about a man, who isolates himself from the world and building a wall around himself, and then at the end of the movie just breaks down so that he can rejoin society. And in a sense that this episode also kind of carries that tribute by having the ceiling of the city that the girl resided in to be destroyed, and she kind of rejoins with the other civilizations that while she represents her own.
Yeah, I would say my favorite old episode is with Nur. Like I alluded before, Nur is a tragic, depressing, and suicidal girl. Whether or not is a tasteless reference to the real life Kurt Cobain or not is up to debate.
Well, I felt uncomfortable in my own regard.
Yeah. So in this particular episode, which is an homage to Sex Pistols, she went to this city that is loosely inspired or mostly inspired by London. And, after she was betrayed by her comrade in the previous episode that she started in, she's just going around all depressing by herself, trying to find a new family and somewhere she can go home. And then she encountered these two boys, who are anarchists and, want to rebel against society as homage to Sex Pistols with their punk anarchist, songs. She quickly formed a bond with them. She get to, enjoy the experience and, joy of having, a family. And she gets to listen and, knows about these boys, dreams and their ambitions. But then again, at the end of the episode, it just tragically, ends with them, losing their lives, sacrificing themselves, saving the city. And I have to admit, it was shocking to me, and I felt like that was one of the more emotional episodes in the show.
It's too bad that the final episode completely ruins it, but which we'll get to soon enough.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of the final episode, the message that love is the answer to everything, including wars and hate. It makes us laugh out loud how generic it is, and it's like the anime had an attempt to make us take it seriously, but it's just feels so bad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as bad as the final episode is and hilarious. I do have to give it credit that at least, it ties up all the loose ends that, everybody goes around their lives, the post-apocalyptic state, finally starts improving, and it ends sort of and the adventure continues kind of trope that even Rage of Bahamut Season 1 had, but while it's an open end, but it gives the sense that even if you don't watch, another season, which hopefully this will never get another season, that you're satisfied and it doesn't leave with a frustrating cliffhanger. So it at least, ended when it had to end.
It achieved something that, Fairy Gun and Inspector didn't. So at least it's a bonus in our opinion.
Yeah, I guess so. Overall, listeners only mildly entertaining, though we did have to get through, first 4 painfully boring episodes. But it doesn't really have anything other. I mean, sure, the homages, does, show an indication that there was some, passion and thought put into this, but that's just about it. I mean, there are so many other animes similar to this that are far better that you could watch instead.
I mean, if you're into mecha battles, amazing musics and animations and good character writing and relationship, I suggest you watch the rather older work, EUREKA 7, like I said before, and you won't be disappointed. If you're just looking for a full-on musical experience anime to watch, I would suggest watching Carol and Tuesday. I mean, it has way better original soundtrack, somewhat better character relationship, and overall a more humbler and, less, world-destroying scale type ending to it. And, it has the same similar story structure.
Yeah, and if you're one of those people that just loves random references just for the sake of reference, but still want to be entertained, I think High Score Girl would be more up your alley.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily think that Listener is as bad as Inspector and Fairy Gone, as it was more entertaining, and it has some very good visuals at some point and good sound design. Overall, I would say that, this was just simply more than average anime. Sure, we did enjoy some of the key moments, and we did, find some of the referencing, like you said, quite, good and tempting. But that's all it has to it. This show has just style and no substance.
Yeah, I mean, with its premise and what it set out to do, it should have delivered more. And in that sense, while it might be average, it being disappointing, makes it, a rather bad anime. Well, after that, disappointing debacle, we kind of hope that, watching Symphogear, would have washed the bad taste out of our mouths. and in some way, it kind of did, but just not in the way that we expected. Unlike Listeners, which attempted to be original with its plot, Symphogear is a standard music anime with idle magical girl premise. The series is about Hibiki Tachibana, an ordinary schoolgirl who gained the power to transform into a battle armor known as Symphogear. She juggles between her school life and defending humanity, while fighting alongside Tsubasa Kasanari, a veteran idol warrior who is struggling to come to terms with what happened in the past that affected both her and Hibiki. Also, random Yuri scenes! To be honest, we kind of feel bad about talking about this anime with such a bad timing, because we found out while making this episode that the director of the first season of Symphogear, recently passed away, and to be fair, the animation of Symphogear, overall, it is decent, and also music and entertainment value that we entertain it overall, but the plot itself is another matter entirely.
Yeah, I mean, I was in love with this anime for the first 10 episodes. How it's presented as being this very dark Madoka Magica-esque anime, and I was hoping that it would keep that momentum going forward. But the main problem with this anime is the final 3 episodes, which completely shit bad.
Yeah, which we'll get to soon.
Yeah, and
deja vu much?
And I would say that I agree with you. The animation is really decent. It's quite good. Fighting scene in this one are much better than Listener. Wow, no surprise there. 2012, anime with this, Sasuga moments, a lot of, impressive hand-drawn 2D animation, and a lot of cool attack that the character used instead of just, shouting random song lyrics and explosion. So one problem they do have is that, it's also, they also reuse animation, and attacks are often repeated the same way over and over again.
Yeah, and it's not cool in a sense, like how in each Sailor Moon episode, there was that one iconic attack that they use. I mean, there are variations, but since they are not so iconic, repeating them too many times that we just become accustomed to it. I mean, but one cool thing about the fights themselves that I at least liked was this idea that using singing through fighting. That the characters are literally, singing their own character songs, while they're fighting against, noises, these creatures, main antagonists that they're fighting against. And I thought it was sort of cool because it kind of made it more, music-centric and also adds, more character to them and the coolness factor.
I would disagree with you. It's your own opinion that you like it and all, but I just find this whole concept just, not that, unique or, it felt like jarring to me at least. I mean, the characters are fighting, they have this cool, kick-ass battles and, amazing techniques, and meanwhile they're just singing. And the show doesn't make it clear, when they're singing or when they're talking. Their mouth just move. It's like this, it's like, as if I can just easily, just mute the music playing in the background and replace it with some random song while the character is fighting. It wouldn't make any single difference.
Well, I mean, in the first 10 episodes, it was kind of unclear, but for some reason, in the last 3 episodes, we find out that all those, was talking, was supposed to happen inside their heads. But what's confusing is that they only gained this ability after a certain power-up, but before that, how exactly were they talking, while they were singing that, was it like in their minds or like that? So that's kind of confusing, but I do agree on you on that. I do agree that, it can kind of get repetitive, after a few times, especially with the first 2 main characters, but there is this one exception, which I'll get to soon.
Yeah. So let's talk about character, and oh boy, Symphogear has a lot of interesting main character to talk about. Let's start with Hibiki. In some way, her character personality is similar to Maria from Fairy Gone. She's this bubbly, pacifist girl who has a lot of insecurity, but at the same time, I think her personality is way more defined. She has this strong sense of justice, and she wants to help people, and the story actually portray her struggle really well. And I thought, she's one of the more, relatable protagonists in anime like this. She is certainly generic, but at the same time, she has element in her that make her stand out. And I especially liked her relationship with her friends, which we will get soon later, and of course, her interaction with Tsubasa.
Yeah, I especially like Tsubasa because her character is sort of a trope that we've seen in anime before, that when somebody encounters this really tragic event or something else that causes them to suddenly decide to stop feeling any emotion, that they either become robots or that they just do their duty. But what I like about the way it was executed with her character is that she's not really good with it. I mean, her past shows that, she was this really bubbly, energetic, and, very optimistic. And while she is certainly cynical, but the way, she acts, emotionless, it feels like she's struggling, is that her real personality seems to seep through every time, and especially moments of anger, that she's just forcing herself, even though she, in her mind, she really doesn't want to, that which actually pays off, later, once she, finally decides to stop being just a sword and, start singing because that's her dream.
Yeah, I mean, and my favorite out of all the Symphogear user is Kurisu.
It's Chris.
Anyway, Kurisu. While I don't initially like her armor design that much, I feel like, she has the most, maturity of the character development among the 3 girls. I like her struggles. I like her story and how it's resolved at the end. And I like the unique way that she's the only girl among the cast whose singing evolved throughout the story. which we will get into later.
Yeah, soon enough.
So let's talk character relationship. As I previously mentioned, Hibiki has her main struggle in the show is her relationship with another girl, her best friend Miku.
Yeah, Miku is kind of interesting because even though she's technically like, Sailor Moon's, best friend in the original, but unlike that character who has almost nothing to do with the plot, she kind of serves as this, sort of a relationship to the regular people who are unaware of the world of danger that she is part of, since she's constantly struggling with her school life and and saving the world. But what I sometimes found a bit confusing with Miku was that when there was this crisis that they have in their relationship when it nearly ends, it's kind of hard to determine what exactly is her exact motivation why she feels like that she cannot be Hibiki's friend anymore. That is it jealousy? Is it because she is afraid of her getting hurt or something like that? But it's still leads to really interesting character development and some really touching moments like that, and and also the way they're portrayed of being really close friends like that that is really adorable and heartwarming at times to watch.
And then one character, side character who I also like is the Tsubasa uncle Genjiro. This anime badass who doesn't give a shit, who take no shit from anyone, just kick ass, kind of like remind me of Master Asia from,
Who needs no Gundam to wreck shit around?
I mean, he obviously has superior strength and superhuman power, like even enough to overpower the main antagonist. However, I feel like, he was lying way too much, even have a cheap shot was taken down by the antagonist at the end. I think, his most interesting aspect is his relationship with Chris. As I alluded before, Chris is this one, lonely and, hateful girl who's just, grow up without any family. And, she lost the touch of, an adult and with no one to guiding her. So after she was betrayed by her, master, she found herself in her most vulnerable positions. And, and Genjiro just approached her and, offering her a helping hand, and even teach her the value of friends and family. As generic as that sound, I found that moment a bit touching. And, it did serve as a basis for Chris growing up later and, change herself, both personality and character-wise going forward to the story.
Yeah, she is definitely my favorite character. But aside from, those main characters, the only side characters that are interesting enough to talk about are these three schoolmates that sometimes interact, with Hibiki and Miku and occasionally Tsubasa. And one of them, whose name I cannot remember, has this weird running gag where she sometimes compares, that the things that are happening around her, are like anime. And I thought at first that it would just be a one-off gag that happens like about 3 or 4 times, but then towards the end it kind of has this plot relevance where she starts talking about that that is this an anime, that I'm a fictional character, something like that, and it serves as a motivation of courage for the characters to to go and help Hibiki after
Yeah, I mean it doesn't feel tack on at all. At least it served its purpose.
Yeah, even though it's
so ridiculous.
The Symphogear's plot structure, despite the fact that it's a magical girl show, is surprisingly not that much of a villain of the day scenario. I mean, sure, there are sometimes introduced these new types of enemies known as the noise. Per terms of size, abilities, and appearance. But each episode has this main plot progress rather smoothly, and how even when there is very little action happening in terms of fighting and some personal relationship issues. But the main plot still happens in each episode, and it feels like none of the episodes, feel like a waste of time or that it could have been easily skipped over like that. But there is this one elephant in the room that we've kind of danced around when we first talked about Miku and her relationship with Hibiki, and it's the Yuri scenes. We don't exactly know, why they are here. I don't say that they were disgusting or anything. They were more confusing because there were so few of them throughout the show that and that most of them, might as well have not have been there, and and you wouldn't have missed any of the plot.
I mean, what? Don't you just like it when, two girls just in the middle of the battle, just pushing each other down to the ground and then just start swapping spit?
You mean Fate Colored Prisma?
What? Don't you just like it when, two girls was just having casual conversation and then just go into the bathroom, having this, extra avant-garde shower scene with each other?
Isn't that Monogatari?
What? Don't you like it when, the show just has, two cute girls just sharing one popsicle with each other and, just slurping them? Oh, okay. Wait a minute. This is not supposed to be here. What? Don't you like it when, you see these two girls, sharing the bed with each other and, taking a casually hand holding and, taking a bath with each other and building their friendship and relationship?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it didn't, really disturb me that much. And I have to admit that at some points, it's like that one scene, when they are, at the bed together, like the other, like Miku, holding her, like this. And while, of course, it kind of, alludes to, to her unrequited love with Hibiki, which we are not sure whether it pays off, in the following seasons. But I thought that, their friendship, was a bit adorable, and and it's kind of rare to see the two two characters being friends and being this close to each other, and I thought that it was really heartwarming at times. It's not like the following seasons are gonna be much more involved with Yuri than this season had, right?
Tempting fate much?
What?
While I think, the fights against the villains and the noise is good and all, a majority of the plot focus on dealing with personal relationship of the main cast, most notably, Hibiki and Miku, and Tsubasa and her, getting over, Kanade death in the beginning of the show, and, and Chris coming to terms with her own loneliness and, finding friends and comrades to, share, joy and pain with. I think, for the most part, character development was really good in this show, and it's certainly one of the show's strongest point. The show also attempt to have some world building by mentioning countries, by having these countries owning different relics, which is a plot point that would be more relevant in future seasons. Hopefully. And I think, obviously enough, the bad guy there is American.
Well, though they are, mysteriously sidelined by the end of the season, though they were probably returned, in the following seasons. Though I don't exactly mind their presence much because it leads to maybe some of the most hilarious English that we've ever heard.
I know you're not the only one who finds this place such a dirty doctor your scammon is. It's just a childish Anderson who hasn't even looked at the depth of black art.
like that, one line that, these, you Americans come...
Such a dirty doctor your scammon is.
Black... What was that line? I mean...
Depth of black art.
I don't necessarily like the opening visuals and the music in it. It felt really underwhelming to me. I mean, it's the music itself is just generic, seasonal anime opening, and and the visual is just, some scene, some action scene, and, some generic, seasonal anime opening visual flair going on. It's not technically bad, but, this is a show that, has its main premise circling around, competent idol singers as main character. I would love it for it to have a more, avant-garde and more, unique, visual pleasing opening with, a more, hype type of songs.
Yeah, I mean, even listeners surprisingly, had interesting visuals and somewhat a decent, music, to kind of introduce us, to music anime. But one exception though, is actually the ending, song, because its visuals, actually, quite dreadful and, well, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that literally, that it's really haunting that, these, body parts and, these mannequin parts that are shown on these painting hangings on the wall, and and the music kind of paints this really horrific events. But on the other hand, it kind of confused me because by the time we were finished this show, we were wondering that where exactly does any of this happen, or what does it have to do with anything? I mean, is it alluding to future seasons like that? But because its placement here, it feels like that we're watching some horror anime, and not a fucking idol. While I like the idea of the fighting through singing, even I have to admit that by the end of this show, it started becoming, a bit repetitive, like you said. But one exception that kind of kept me liking this idea, though, was Chris, because during her development through the show, she actually has 2, or was it 3, regardless, multiple different, songs for herself to sing while she was battling. And it kind of reflects, her mental state, and also how she feels about her opponents around her. I mean, it first starts about, about murder and like that, and eventually start talking about, defending people and like that. And and I kind of wish that, the 2 other characters, would have had something like that. But with Chris, it was a nice touch. Yeah,
and I also like the last song that the girl has, when, they sing one final performance together. It was, it's break the mold from the repetitiveness, and I give credit to the anime for that. Yeah. The transformation visuals, remind a lot about Sailor Moon, which I'm not entirely sure, actually, you know what? It doesn't just remind me. It's like a frame by frame, saying, I mean, it feels like that they combined, at least with Sailor Mars's, these, floating rings thing that she has, and then, with one of, Sailor Moon's later transformations where she kicks through the air and leaps through like this, and, that they combined these two. And whether, that was a direct homage or a ripoff, I'm not entirely sure, but I kind of wish that it would have, been a bit more striking, because it feels like that, that I could just be watching a Sailor Moon instead of this. Yeah, well, I mean, it also feels really repetitive when, unlike, previous anime that we reviewed, Beautiful Bones, where this transformation or, let's solve the mystery, sequence is play out, Here, in that anime, it's just, briefly, fast forward to, and, doesn't ruin the pacing and feel like it's padding out time at all.
Or being used too much.
Yeah, or here in the anime, almost every single episode has that. And also, this anime has this one very cool, unique, I would say, style of portraying attack, where whenever a character performs any attack, there's a visual box of text in different style, with Tsubasa is a traditional Japanese woodblock, throw. I like the concept and the idea. It was really visual pleasing to see on top of the very good animation. But after seeing it used so many times and reused frame by frame, even till the final battle, it just felt too repetitive to be amazed anymore.
Yeah, though, it was still good that they had, multiple different attacks, instead of just one, like in Listeners.
Yeah, and I like the design of the noise, the enemy in this anime much more than the earless from Listener. One is, really, good looking and colorful 2D hand draw animations.
It's like out of Kingdom Hearts, with those dream or nightmares or whatever those fuck balls were called.
Yeah. It's like, you can't go wrong with 2D animations and 2D, hand draw character. So, when compared to, Listener flat and, boring 3D CGI monster, it stands out. Although I would say that, when it comes to character design, I find that, Listener has way better character design than the overly anime generic, character design that Symphogear has.
Yeah, and speaking of Symphogear, it's kind of uncomfortable of mentioning this, but the armor design that that these girls have, whenever they transform, it kind of reminds me of Angel Blade, especially the main villain. I mean,
does it make you want to
give your meat a good old rub?
That's sick, man.
Yeah, boy.
From this point on, we have to warn you about spoilers. If you're interested of watching Symphogear, at this point, there is no going back, But I feel like that this was one of the anime where it would do disjustice if we wouldn't talk about the end in itself, what leads to it, because it kind of changes how we felt about the first 10 episodes and also the overall, how we felt about it. That it's, if I were to sum it up, where the hits the fan, so hard.
Yeah, it has something in it so insane and mind-bogglingly stupid. It felt so corny with this, Saturday morning cartoon villain that, and her plan and goal, that we couldn't stop laughing. It's completely removed all of the, darker and, high state, element in the previous episode and the character development, just for this, one, mess up an ending. In a sense, it was more nonsensical than Listener conclusion. At least, Listener has a goal. At least Listener has a message it's trying to convey. But what is the message of this ending?
Well, yeah, I mean, there is this, message of that the power of friendship, will solve everything. Mm-hmm. But it's even more nonsensical because it's not just a literal idea that it actually works, which, But speaking of the main villain, if I were to sum up her plot, how most animes are known that how villains usually have these very complex backstories or very complex philosophical plots. Mm-hmm. Well, the main villain's goal basically in this anime is that she wants to conquer the world because she wants to get rid of this curse that is afflicting humanity. She essentially, possessed this one science woman who is friends with the main cast, and her plan involves using a literal gigantic mechanical tower hidden inside under the school to fire a huge beam into the moon to blow it up so it will cause, total chaos and discord on Earth, so that everyone will fear her and she can rule it with an iron fist, like something like what Am Bison, tried to do. That. I mean, after all these, interesting, well, serviceable and interesting characters with psychological issues like that, and we get this,
overly shonen,
calling it shonen would be insulting. This is like a Saturday morning cartoon of a Disney cartoon, where I will conquer the world, and like that. I mean, the fact.
Speaking of shonen, the ending of this, the final 3 episodes of this anime has way so many cops out and fade out death that it just make it feel ridiculous, and there's no state at all. I mean, first of all, to stop this, massive, gigantic cannon shot from destroying the moon, Chris sacrificed herself and apparently died, but not really. And it caused Hibiki to go on this, berserk rampage and lose herself, which Tsubasa has to sacrifice herself and to, destroy the tower and snap Hibiki out of it. Which she doesn't also not really dead. And it caused, Hibiki to go on this, depressive, oh my God, my friends are dead, everyone is, that, gone, I'm the only one left, I want to give up and and until literally, singing, from her friends, and the cheering of people,
Basically said that don't give up, you can do it, you're our only hope, you're our savior.
Yeah, and literally, until literally a spirit bomb, people hopes and, cheer, wake her up and, the power of love and friendship, strike again, and it's caused her to evolve her Symphogear into this one newer, and more, powerful ones, which also happened to somehow bring back Chris and Tsubasa from the dead.
Were they dead or were they just sleeping? Like, sorry, I just, took a nap after that, whole thing.
Yeah, and then, they also get new Symphogear for no reason.
Yeah, other than that, the singing and music and cheering and, power of friendship heals everything.
Yeah. like, is this fairy tale?
I think it would be more accurate to say, is this My Little Pony? So after, managing to, stop the main villain from destroying the world, Hibiki offers her hand in friendship despite the fact that she should be stopping her, restraining her, or if it was me, kill her, or some way incapacitate her so she could do no more damage, only for her to to decide that screw everyone, and she decides to to launch a freaking rope on a piece of moon that was launched off after the beam partially struck the moon and shattered it, and then literally pulls the entire piece towards the earth to just destroy everything. And yet after seeing that, Hibiki still just says the same thing and offers her hand in friendship, and then the villain just smiles that maybe someday I will accept your friendship, but then just crumbles to ash and disappears.
Yeah, and almost immediately after that scene, the three girls launch into space in one final attempt to stop the meteor or the moon pieces from killing everyone, and they did this really amazing looking one final attack where they all sing together, the three of them, kind of like, a whole huge collaboration song that they made. And, it was impressive at least, and it did end up, succeeding, and, it's destroyed that piece of the moon. Crisis is averted, and, they are presumed dead. And the show actually alluded to this in the very first scene of episode 1 by teasing us that, maybe Hibiki and the girls are dead. And, after that, moon explosion, we're cut back to that first scene from episode 1. And literally, I shit you not, in the last few minutes before the episode ends.
No, it wasn't the last few minutes. It was literally less than 60 seconds.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, when we first started watching this, we kind of knew from the first episode that this is a cop-out, that there's no way, Hibiki is dead, that there has to be something more to this story and like that. And after, the final 3 episodes aired and we saw, so many fake-outs and cop-outs that we like that, you already saw us, seeing all that fake-outs. What makes you think we're gonna trust you again? And then, they appear in front of, Miku as, she's trying to save this girl from, the remnants of noise. And then Hibiki just casually explains, with one sentence that, yeah, sorry, we were a bit too busy, these few days. And then she doesn't elaborate further. And then, the last, like, was it 10 or 15 seconds, are just, this montage of pictures with some narration and showing, girls doing stuff. And then there's this, one, main side plot, with Hibiki and Miku that they would go to see, these, stars, falling. What were they called? Yeah, shooting stars.
Shooting star, yeah.
Yeah, shooting stars. And they would watch it together, but she kept breaking her promise, to Miku, since she was so busy with work. And they finally go, but we don't actually build up to that emotional moment that they finally got to see it together. That there's only that picture of like 3 seconds, and then it cuts to the credits like that. And then once the credits started rolling, we were broken. This anime just broke us, and we laughed. Like, I don't know how long we laughed, but it was so fucking ridiculous. Like we were like, what the f*** did we just watch?
Yeah, like at one point I was wondering, like, is this a dream, or like, is there something that the Blu-ray has that this doesn't has, and it just doesn't. It just ends.
Yeah, I mean, I get the feeling. I know that it might have alluded to that there's gonna be a season 2 or like that, but the fact that it just ended, in a most unresolvable way, and and just rushes to the end. That we only have 1 minute left. Let's wrap everything up. We don't have time. We ran out of the animation budget. Let's just put these montage of images that we were supposed to do. Go, go, go.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah. Symphogear definitely had potential to be a decent, slightly above average anime, but the final episode, just kind of, made a mess of the bed so badly that that it kind of changed everything and kind of ruined, some of the build up. But I can't deny, how laughably awful and entertaining, the last 3 episodes were, even though I would have rather preferred it if it was in some, much worse anime and not in this, which was actually kind of decent.
Yeah. I mean, I would prefer that, Hibiki, Tsubasa, and Chris actually died at the end, and the show just have this really open ending where we maybe make a new season or not, with Miku being the next generation Symphogear girls. That would have been a more entertaining ending and a good conclusion to a show like this. But how show like this is made. It's just make themselves album of songs, and make nerdy otaku drool over. So of course it has to end with an ending that lead up so that it can make like 5 more seasons of the And I don't think whether or not it is a good thing. We just don't know. We just have to watch to make sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely gonna be coming back to Symphogear at some point, since I need some answers. I need to find out does the story continue exactly from that point on? Does Miku actually end up becoming a magical girl herself at some point, and whether or not some of these things that we saw in a montage would be explored a bit more? But something tells me that it's only going to get even more ridiculous from here on out. But only time will tell. So, but we'll be coming back to it. Wink, wink.
Yeah. So it's time to give our recommendation on which show that you should watch. And I would say rather reluctantly that we would recommend watching Symphogear. I mean, there was at least it has a lot of potential, and some build up for the character that would make it more enjoyable to watch going forward.
Yeah, and it definitely has more entertainment value, and I do mean it both in terms of a decent serviceable writing, and also a really hilariously awful ending and like that, and unlike Listeners, who was only 1 season, and concluded. I mean, considering that this show, Symphogear, has like 5 seasons in total, it might have some potential to actually pick up its slack and eventually start to improve on. But but if I were to to choose the recommendations, yeah, I too would choose Symphogear, but because that's the only logical choice.
Yeah. So that's it for this week's episode. For the viewer watching at home, we wish you a very pleasant weekend. Go out and enjoy the summer and, watch some animes. And until then,
we'll see you next time on another edition of
The Midnight Cable.
thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and click for the bell icon for notifications for future videos. Also, if you want to hear updates for other content and fun stuff, click the icons on the screen. I'm Giman, and I'll see you all next time.